Ladies and gentlemen, it is March the 3rd, just after midnight, and we are here to talk philosophy with Eche Fatum, and tonight's topic is love! What kind of love? I don't know. What does philosophy have to say about love? I don't know. Let's call him and find out. You call him. I called him on Discord. Let's see if he picks up. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
I can hear you now.
All right, just need to put the right devices. Is the mic picking up okay?
It sounds like it's the wrong microphone.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Eche Fatum joining us for the philosophy of love from the bottom of a well.
Better now?
Yes.
All right.
It has been fixed.
Yeah, I had to set up my old computer because the new one, well, new would be a stretch, but my usual computer crashed.
Oh no. Yeah, and you said you've been pretty busy with the fatherhood stuff. Are you still in the prep phase, or do you have a live extra unit in the home now?
No. That will be June.
Oh, June, okay.
No, but it takes a lot of preparation, just basically knowing how to do things and all the stuff you need, and just being ready mentally to take care of another human.
Yeah. Have you thought about if
Um,
they're going to play Protoss or...
I assume as much. It's like family tradition.
Right. So yeah, we've got the philosophy of love. What kind of love were you going to talk about, or were you going to talk about all the kinds?
Well, I wanted to, like, the idea came to talk about the different types of love and kind of seeing that love isn't the same as love necessarily and what different types there are. So, what I have in terms of notes is basically to talk about the distinctions of different types of love, as Aristotle put it. So there are 8 different types. Then to give a bit more modern view is different types of love according to modern psychology. And then we can look at some lovely quotes over the years from different thinkers, philosophers on what they had to say about love. And lastly, and I think we touched on this before, but I think it's good to repeat it for people that haven't heard it and also for people that are already familiar with it, is the different love languages. So basically learning how to love better
How to express your
through
love?
your, yeah, how to express your love better. And knowing what your significant other need, should need in terms of you showing your love, because that's not always the same. Yeah, and I think that love in general is something that is the value of it is understated these days. Not, I think we're overstating the value of erotic love, but not love in terms of companionship and just having appreciation for something without being able to jump in bed with it.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's a counterforce to the emotions that cause division, jealousy, anger, hatred, things like that. where love isn't the opposite per se, but it is a force that creates the opposite result, which is unity between people, collaboration, fellowship, community, things like that. And love can happen in all different kinds of extents. I guess one thing that you can mention before we get into Aristotle's perception of what love is how love is expressed in the animal kingdom, not just between humans. Like, I think most people would agree that a dog can love and a cat can love, and you can see other animals kind of caring for each other. Like a parent animal cares for a child and is willing to sacrifice itself for it. It no doubt feels that kind of emotion. Yeah, it's an interesting process of trying to describe it when it's not something that's understood on a hard scientific level, but it still definitely has major behavioral effects on how we treat each other if there's the presence or the absence of love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think love is kind of difficult to describe in general, and it's very personal what love means.
Mm.
Like everyone has a kind of a different idea of what it means to be in love or to feel loved. And to start with this, I kind of want to talk a little bit about Ludwig Wittgenstein, because it's always good to kind of start with him when talking about these subjects. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think we've actually did a longer lecture about him just yet. I think I've prepared one once, but we never did it. But I'm not sure.
I don't think we did.
Anyways, yeah, Wittgenstein was a Austrian philosopher in the late 19th and 20th century, and he was very obsessed with the idea of things making sense in a rational way, but soon discovering that this is very difficult to do because language itself is very subjective. And the example he used was a toothache. So as you grow up, you change your teeth, and it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And you're being taught that what you're feeling right now is a toothache.
Mm-hmm.
But you have little idea of if the feeling you're having is the same feeling as someone else has when they experience something similar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the word toothache describes the feeling you had at the time, but it doesn't describe this generic toothache feeling, because there is no such thing. It's personal for everyone.
Yeah.
Another good example of this is when we describe the color of the sky, which has a nice lightish blue for me at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we all call the color of a clear sky blue. But we have little idea if what the other person sees, if we would still call that blue, or if they're seeing the color differently. But since we all describe that color that we're seeing as blue, we have this idea that this is blue, but we're not 100% sure that blue is the same for everyone. Very interesting there is when you have blind people describing colors, because they have no concept of what a color looks like, but they can still, like, based on what they know about the color, describe it in a way that is just has its distinct beauty to it, where it's not based on any facet of different types of colors, but more of a feeling it invokes, or a the sense a color gives you.
Yeah, kind of like warm or cool colors, where
Yeah.
the colors like orange and yellow aren't physically warmer, but they evoke the emotions that we feel when there's a sunrise and when those color things happen, which is usually associated with warmth.
Yeah, or also the colors of a fire. But fires can also be blue, and we wouldn't describe blue as a warm color.
Yeah, that's
So
relatively rare in natural context, though, to have blue fire. If you're in a hunter-gatherer society and there's a blue fire, something is up.
Yeah.
Prepare for the apocalypse.
But it's a quite cheap research to get blue flame hellions, so it's at least semi-common.
That's
in
true.
TVZ at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at that, and then you soon realize that when it comes to a subject as complex, as in-depth as love, it's even more personal. Like, the way we've experienced love as we grew up will have a big impact on what we will think of what love means, and how to express love, how to feel loved, how to make someone else feel loved. Yeah, so that's why I think it's a good that's a good reason to kind of talk about what there is in terms of different types of love, and how to go about living a life with as much love as possible, because I'd say that's a good thing in general. There's some caveats to it, but in general, I'd say more love. The more love, the better.
I would agree with that.
So, first thing I wanted to ask you, as well as chat, to just list, let's say, 3 things you love.
Can they be people?
No, specifically things.
Ooh.
We're gonna get to the people part.
Okay. Things that you love.
Things not necessarily as objects, but also like viewing a sunrise.
Coffee in the morning. A scenic run. Chat, what are some things you love? Rito, thank you for the raid. We're talking about the philosophy of love. List 3 things that you love. They cannot be people, they must be things or activities.
So I was thinking about this too, and the 3 things that kind of came to mind first for me was surfing. I just love the feeling of being pushed forward by a natural force. That is water. It's one of the biggest loves of a activity, I guess I have. The other thing, I've been playing a bit of poker again lately, and one thing I really love is knowing when someone is way too aggressive in their play, to just slow roll them. And basically wait for them to put all their chips in with little to nothing, and being able to call off with a marginal hand.
Yep. Play for value against the aggro monkey. I remember this training. That is a very satisfying situation to be in. A way to make that even more satisfying is whenever they're also BM at the table. They're talking themselves up. They're talking about how people are shit. They're just kind of, trying to make a bit of a scene, also distract people, also make themselves look cool and look tough. And then you've been patiently noticing the behaviors of all the different people at the table, and you notice that that person, they kind of just throw their weight around even if they don't actually have anything good. I wonder if I just waited until I got something good and then let them basically fall on that sort of value.
Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to list here is the love of knowledge, which is philosophy. Just the mental exercise of thinking through existence and the different ideas we have, and how to put different lights on it, and to just realize that we know little about what there is, but we have so many different ways to describe it, and many of them are beautiful, others are a bit more how to call this, come with some existential dread, but just the realm of being able to think through these concepts and to see other people's view on it. It's a thing of beauty.
Mm-hmm. Agree. The immense access to knowledge that we have. That kind of love seems like a form of gratitude to me. Guess it could be another descriptor of how we can feel positively about something.
Yeah. So as a second exercise, we're gonna list 3 people we love.
Ah. I will do Trisha, do my brother, and then I'll do my parents as one team. That's 4, I know. Maybe that's gonna upset some people. You can't do 4.
I love my wife. I love I do love my family, but I'm gonna list especially my friend Christian and my friend Ruben,
Nice.
because it's always such a pleasure to hang out with them and to talk philosophy and to just have this kind of friendly relationship where you always feel at home when you meet them.
Nice. I have a really nice relationship with my family. We've been a very solid nuclear unit of 4 pretty much our whole lives. Our family has traveled around and stuff, but my parents have had a stable marriage, which I'm very grateful for. And they've set a really good example of us in terms of expressing yourself through your words and not through violence, and just generally living by principles. And one thing that I really appreciate learning from my father was that strength doesn't need to be aggression. You can be a strong person and you can be a protector who is ready and willing to help people in need, but who is not throwing their weight around and trying to push down other people to be superior to them.
Yeah, that's a very nice lesson.
Mm-hmm. I think of my father a lot of times when I get BM'd by opponents, and it causes me to not take it personally at all. I just feel like, damn, they didn't have a strong role model like that. So then you feel more, that's unfortunate for them rather than personally attacked.
Yeah, it's not when someone gets angry at you in a game or generally in life, it has very little to do with you, although it could be if you're being a dickhead, that's you get what you reap what you sow. But for the most part, it's something else going on in their life. And there's a good quote that you should always have compassion because you don't know what battle the other person is currently fighting. One person that kind of gets forgotten a lot when we think of people that we love, and this is one type of the different loves according to Aristotle, is ourselves. And this is something we will get to a bit later on, and I think it's arguably the most important person to love.
It is the person you have to spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Yeah, not having a healthy level of self-love can often result in contempt for oneself. I think a lot of people get into that. It's like a spiral almost of self-loathing where you see things you dislike about yourself and that causes you to lose momentum in pushing yourself and getting things done. And then you dislike yourself even more. So even just finding a few things that you would consider to be good traits for yourself and then try to use that as a handhold and a foothold for you to climb up to being your best self. And then also finding contentment and feeling like, yeah, I'm grateful to be a human in the modern world. We do have a lot of gifts afforded to us by our ancestors who fought for electricity and agriculture and the Industrial Revolution that give us all kinds of cool things that we can do. We got thrown into the game at an interesting time, and it's pretty cool to get to experience it and, like you said, have access to all that knowledge and also be able to meet so many cool people. Twitch chat.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the relationship that the love for oneself has to how we're loving others. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily hard to love someone else when you don't love yourself, but I think it makes it really difficult to accept someone else's love. So learning to love yourself a little more is a really good exercise.
I think some people are
However you
also
go about it.
they're also built in with the worry that loving yourself too much will be narcissistic or egotistical, like you're overly focused on yourself. So sometimes they'll try to actively avoid that process of practicing self-love.
I would say this can be true, but as with most things, if you're the type of person that worries about that, you're most likely not loving yourself enough. Because the people that do love themselves too much do not worry themselves with such thoughts.
Chat, you have permission to love yourself. Green light.
You don't only have permission, you have very good reasons to do so. So, with that, let's dive into Aristotle. And we talked about him when we talked about Plato, I think, with the second or third um, philosophy lectures we did. So that's quite a while ago. I don't even know when we started doing these.
It's got to be years ago at this point.
Yeah, would say like 3, 4 years, maybe more. Would need to go back in time to see. I don't remember, like we've moved a couple of times since, but I tried to remember today like when or where was I when we first recorded one of these, and I couldn't remember anymore.
It was before I moved into this place, which was like almost 5 years ago now, like 3 to 4. I think I moved to Seattle, and we were doing it before then. So when I was still in Texas, it's been a while.
So it's been a while since we started
Mhm.
talking, and since we specifically talked about Aristotle. So he was the kind of guy that tried to break everything down into different aspects of it, or group things up, like the animal kingdom and how it's sorted these days, like into different families and different
Kingdoms.
types of kingdoms. Exactly. This is not Aristotle's work, but it's based on how he did things. Basically, sorting stuff was his hobby. And so he also sorted the different types of love. And the first one, and this is the one we hinted on already, is the one that's been overstated. It's the one we see in all the love movies. It's called Eros, and it's the erotic love. So it's aptly named after the Greek god of love and fertility. So this is the kind of love you feel. It's like love at first sight is erotic love, because you know very little of the other person. You fall in love based on their looks and based on how much you would like to spend some intimate time with them.
The TOS kind of love.
Exactly. So Eris is passionate, it's intense, it's romantic, and it's sexual in nature. It's described here as Eros is a primal and powerful fire that burns out quickly. It needs its flame to be fanned through one of the deeper forms of love below, as it's centered around the selfish aspects of love, that is, personal infatuation and physical pleasure. And the love catalyst, which is kind of the thing that arouses that love, is the physical body. The second type of love is affectionate love, called philia, and we see this in in different terms, like pedophilia for a not as good of an example for a love that goes wrong. It's like philia just in general means affection towards.
Yeah,
That's
like
where the name comes from.
an audiophile would be someone who really appreciates good quality sounds. So whenever I got these headphones, that was one of the things that usually people who are only very concerned about audio quality would feel like is worth the investment.
Yeah. But it's also a prefix, like in terms of pedophilia, it's a, what is it called when it comes after? Well, the opposite of a prefix. Philosophy. Suffix, exactly. Philosophy is the love of knowledge. So the phil is also the love.
I didn't know that.
Philia is described as the love between friends. It's a love that is not based on physical attraction, but is more based on a mental connection, where we feel love for someone that is has a similar mind, or has a different mind, but that is interesting. It's a love you feel for someone you don't want to get physical with. So this is also the kind of love you would feel towards your pets, for example, or your parents.
So you really enjoy spending time with them. You admire things about them. You feel happy when you're around them, but you don't want to do the business with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the third form is storge. And this is kind of a type of philia. It's the specific love you have for people you've been around with a long time. So this is basically familiar love. So you have this for your family if you like them. You have this for friends you've spent a long time with. You have this for basically for everything and everyone you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And I find a good example here also with pets, because I grew up having cats at home and I never had a dog. I never really felt good about dogs because they're kind of angry and need a lot of work. But when I met my girlfriend, now wife, she had a dog with her. And when you spend a lot of time with any kind of pet, it'd be very difficult not to grow to love them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of pets, they don't do the judgy conversational stuff that humans do, so I think we appreciate them for that. A lot of animals seem to be good-natured if they were treated well, which it's hard to dislike something that is looking at you with kind eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easier to love something or someone where you don't have big expectations of them on how they will return it.
Mm-hmm.
And as for pets, we don't have as big of expectations. Like, you want them to behave well and to not steal your food too often.
Yeah, but they don't have to like do the yard work and stuff.
Yeah.
It would be nice if they emptied the dishwasher, but it doesn't really happen. I have seen videos of dogs going to the fridge and getting a beer for someone. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. But I would assume it takes more time to teach them that trick than it takes to go get the beer yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's this new concept of having a mini fridge next to the couch.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite neat. Although a bit of overindulging maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So the fourth form of love is called ludus, and this is described as a playful form of love. So a good example, I think, would be a love for StarCraft, for example, is this kind of playful love where you want to be good at the game, you love the game for what it is, you can change very little about it. You can change your approach, but it's kind of you love interacting with it and getting stuff out of it.
True. It makes
And
funny things happen and it amuses me on a regular basis.
Yeah. Another good way of describing this is to see a child play with something, where there's just this playful approach towards doing whatever,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I'm very much looking forward to with my son and what he will be into. And we already talked a bunch about like what kind of toys are good for kids and whatnot. And the way my friends described it is basically no matter what toy you get, the kid will like the box it comes in more than the toy itself.
Yeah, it goes for cats as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we thought we'd just buy stuff for ourselves and the kid gets to play with the box.
Nice.
Fine, win-win situation.
Mm.
I forgot. For storage, the love catalyst is memories, like the kind of going back with people or with things. Um, for Ludus, it's astral or emotional. It's basically just um, having loving something for the sake of loving it and not knowing. Like this is, in a sense, very unrational because it's for the feeling itself or for the feeling we get out of it. The fifth type of love is called mania, and this is obsessive love. This is when we love something or someone too much.
Mm.
We're being obsessed with it, we can't let go of it. This can go into addiction when you love a substance or a task too much.
Mm.
Yeah, mania is kind of the bad end of love, where it's too much love or the wrong type of love, or a love not being reciprocated.
Mm.
So this will most likely lead towards suboptimal behavior. And it's also within relationships, mania often leads to codependency.
Yeah, a lot of films and stuff create the misconception that the idea "I can't live without you" is inherently a healthy or a good one. If two people are actually productive as a team, they should strive to also give each other the tools that they need to be able to survive on their own, because you can never be around someone 100% of the time. So you do want to build them up so they can take care of themselves when they're on their own.
Yeah, and like in a perfect world is you learn, like through relationships you do not only learn to love the other person more but also yourself more, so you should lose dependency over time.
Mm.
Because if you're dependent on being loved by another person, it will be devastating to you when they are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And this is obvious, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but by being able to have the kind of self-love, you'd be able to overcome that and don't have to fall into depression or do something worse even when you lose a loved one.
Mm-hmm. Yep, as far as we know, we have mortal forms on this world, so you want to make sure that people are prepared to survive in the case of catastrophe or calamity. If you really love someone, you want to see them succeed, no matter what. Making sure people are well equipped. There was actually a description of love that blew my mind, and then I think a lot of other students who were in the class at the time, because it really shook that movie stereotype of love. We had a professor of world literature, and he was a single father, karate black belt, really entertaining guy. It seemed like he really cared about making his classes entertaining and making sure people learned from them. So we looked up to him, and one of the students in the class was like, "Professor, if you love your wife so much, how come you got a divorce? Like, why didn't you try to make it work?" And he said, "Sometimes you have to love someone enough to let them go." And that was an interesting concept, because if you truly loved someone and you found out that, hey, actually, this is not healthy for us, for you to let them go and let them pursue a better life would be a really healthy long-term decision for their well-being. And if you truly love that person, you would want them to kind of reach that best path for themselves. In movies and books, a lot of times it's love at all costs, love no matter what. I can't breathe when I'm not with you. It's kind of the excessive, obsessive love that you described earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also an interesting concept or question there, whether you love the other person for the person or for how they make you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So if you love them for themselves, it's easier to let them go because you feel like they would benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you love them for how they make you feel, it's a lot harder to let them go because you will not feel that way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an interesting mental exercise to do when you have loved ones, to kind of think through this. And it's never a either or, like it's always in between the two.
Mm-hmm.
But what side you're leaning towards with any kind of relationship? Is it that you love them for who they are, or you love them because of who you are when you're with them?
Mm-hmm.
The sixth type of love is called pragma, and we know this word when we talk about being pragmatic. It's enduring love. So this is not a sexy kind of love. This is the kind of love that is just developed, matured over time. It's not um, the fast burning flame that is the erotic love, or it's not obsessive. This is having spent a lot of time with someone, having harmony, and just it's kind of similar to the familiar love in that sense, where it's this is not something you can start a relationship off with unless you're dating a longtime friend. Then
Mm-hmm.
I guess this would be possible. But also, then I would assume there is some of the fast burning type of love.
Yeah, but this pragmatic kind of love is being able to make things work even if it's not the most convenient. It can survive tests and challenges and stuff.
Yeah. And this is also the kind of love that kind of comes within a relationship where it's not necessarily codependence, but it's like changing with the other person and making compromises and having patience and tolerance for the other one, even though they're kind of acting stupid sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the type of love you get from really having spent time and effort with someone to make a relationship work.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have number 7, which is called philautia, and this is the self-love we briefly touched on. And the Greeks already talked about this, that you first must learn to care and love yourself in order to first have an understanding of what it means to act in a loving way, and then to be able to love someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cannot be good to yourself, if you cannot love yourself, you have a hard time acting in a loving way towards others.
How can you love others if you cannot love yourself?
Yeah.
Heard that one.
And yeah, I'd say that loving yourself is very fundamental in terms of things that we, to some degree, we unlearn it over time. I think this comes very natural as a kid, and then we get told so many things on why we shouldn't love ourselves. Like, you're not doing good enough at school, you're not looking good enough, you're like, we get fed all these things on why we shouldn't love ourselves, and we also get fed a lot of solutions on just buy this beauty product or just do this or that thing in order to love yourself, which is rarely going to work. It's just makes some people some money.
Mm-hmm.
So self-love really comes from the inside and comes from accepting yourself even though you're flawed. And it's not about indulging in those flaws. It's about realizing them, but seeing beyond them and seeing there is someone, something lovable inside of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would be good is to look inside yourself, see what there is to be loved, and to strengthen that side of yourself, and not stray from the path and indulge in the sides that you do not like about yourself.
Mm-hmm. If you really love yourself, you can practice accountability and try to know what you're working on as a person, what you're refining and polishing. Also, being able to strike the balance between pushing yourself and giving yourself rest. I think that's one of the more complex and difficult ways to love yourself. What would you call, like, optimally? Most deeply, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a difficult path to, or it was for me. I'm not sure if it becomes as difficult for everyone, to really find the likable part in yourself, and then to embrace yourself with all your flaws and see, all right, I might not do everything perfectly, but I'm still lovable, and therefore I can love others as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the eighth and last type of love that Aristotle listed was agape, and this is a selfless, unconditional love. A good example is a love of humanity, or a universal love.
We heard about this kind of love in church, Christian church.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the kind of love that isn't aimed at someone or something specific, but it's just the kind of good feeling of I think in some way we could look at this as optimism.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's just like I feel there is good and I want to embrace the good, so this would be a love towards the universe.
Mm-hmm. I think some people have a pretty sour feeling toward the universe. Chad, if you could rate your feeling toward the universe, where 10 is, oh my gosh, this is the best ever, and 1 is like, this is the most terrible, what would you say? I'll give it an 8.5. Probably give it a 7. It's got some cool stuff going on, Personally, I feel like I was dealt a good hand, but I think some people were dealt some pretty bad hands too. People are given 7.58. You go from 13 to negative 33, so extremely favorable. Like, this is the best ever, and like, this is the worst possible hell that anyone could design. It's funny.
Yeah, I think it also depends on like current mood and a lot on outlook on life. Like, what do you expect the future to bring? Basically, being optimistic or pessimistic will make a big difference. So I rated it at 8.5 because I see a lot of potential and I see a lot of good possibly happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I could also go towards like a 2.5 and see like all the shit that could come up and people being terrible and society not dealing with stuff in the right way. So it's hard to put a number on.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing we talked about, and this was a couple of lectures ago, is this feeling that I have that we ought to have a good outlook on life because it will change how we interact with others. It will change how we live our life. That I'm more and more consciously deciding to have a good outlook and basically deciding to become or to have a child and to bring new life into this world came from this, where if you don't have a good outlook, it'd be kind of fucked up to bring other people into it. But once you have a good outlook, it makes a lot of sense to share this positive world with others and create new life.
Hell yeah. Proud of you for going into it with a good perspective. I had a friend growing up who was born a lot later than, earlier than the parents were actually ready to have kids, and that resentment was pointed toward him, where he felt unwanted and out of place. And then like 10 years later, his parents had kids, and they were just the angels of the world, of like the best thing that's ever happened and stuff, because they were ready for those. I think it's a really important practice to, like you're doing now, leading up to being a parent, thinking about why you want to be a parent, what's good about that situation, or in the case that it was a surprise, how you can make it work and give the child the best shot possible. It is a pretty dangerous world out there, so parenting is a weighty responsibility, but I've heard it has some of the best rewards and some of the most deep and true love that you can express for another creature is the love that a parent has for their child.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the best example of this unconditional love. Hopefully, I think it will become at least somewhat conditional over time. When you're like, if your kid's just always doing stupid things, it will be harder to love them fully. I don't think you don't love them anymore, but it's I haven't experienced it yet, but I assume that just like having your own child in your arms, it will be one of the biggest moments in my life. Just this kind of having something that is of you but independent of you, and that is needs you for such a long time but then becomes his own full person. I will be able to talk more about it once it happens, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's also the thing that is the most you of anything else on the planet. So you get a sort of reflection of yourself shuffled with your partner. So you get to see what they got from each person. One thing that was kind kind of fun for my brother and I is we both have blue eyes, but neither of our parents have blue eyes. And I think you can look up in some kind of table what the odds of that are, but they were both carrying the recessive gene for it, and there is a chance that that gets shuffled in. And then you have stuff like their bone structure, what their face looks like, their complexion, skin tone, hair color, things like that. It's a really beautiful process of bringing another creature into the world from reproduction. And then the really important stage, which is teaching the child, because the parents have a massive level of influence on the child, how they equip the child to respond to situations, the level of safety that the child feels as a result of the parent's behavior. That's another thing that I'm very grateful for. My parents never made me feel physically in danger. That's really good. So being able to be gentle with children, especially when they're annoying some of the time. And the like power difference of an adult human versus a kid is massive, so you do really have to be careful about how you're moving around. He's underhyped. How is he supposed to know? It's his first time. People who are already parents are like, he has no idea how awesome it's gonna be. Yeah, he's working on it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, but as I said, it's morning. I'm not hyped for most things.
He's
Except
drinking
for
his coffee.
coffee.
He's not done with his coffee. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we see, based on these 8 different types, that love can take on many different forms, and there's little in terms of love movies that describe a love that is not erotic in nature, but there's so much more depth in other types of love, and most other types depend on a familiarity with something growing together and basically becoming part of each other and not just spending a good time together.
Mm.
So with this, I wanted to also take a look at what modern psychology lists as types of love, and this is based on Sternberg's triangularity theory. So it's types of relationships, which I hope you're having relationships with people you love. So it's different types of how we're lovingly interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So he lists the different types as liking someone. So this is where you share emotional intimacy, but there is no physical component to it. So this would be friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's infatuation, which is purely on the passion side of things. So this is this would be eros again. It's like being super into someone, but you haven't developed the emotional intimacy to really be in a relationship. So this is the type of love you experience mostly in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Or other places, depending on how you do things. Then there is something called empty love. Empty love is when you're in a committed relationship that lacks or has lost passion. So this is basically where it's, I guess, codependency goes into this. When you're having spent so much time with a romantic partner, but the romance has gone out of it, so you're just you're spending time together, but you're not into each other anymore. And this is something that is fixable in many cases, where it's like you just need to light that spark again. And for what I've learned in this regard is it has a lot to do with polarity. And basically, you get too close, you become too much like each other, so you're kind of missing that spark in terms of I'm super attracted to you. So becoming more of yourself again will likely, or both of you coming more of yourself again, like being apart, will or can spark that passion again. Then there is romantic love, which is a passionate relationship that also has emotional intimacy, but it lacks a long-term view of things. So this is second stage relationship, I'd say, when you're kind of over the honeymoon phase, but you're still very much into each other, but you're not planning on having children just yet or growing old together. And the next one is companionate. So this is like one step further, where you have that romantic relationship, emotional intimacy, but you also have a longer view of how you want to spend life together. Where this is important to set up ground rules. This is what I did on my first date with my now wife, and I said, well, if you want to be my girlfriend, you better start surfing, because I will not spend a long time with someone I can't go surf with. Maybe not a good example, but you get what I mean. This is where you spend enough time together, you're emotionally connected enough to see yourself spending not necessarily the rest of your life together, but not seeing a near future where you're not spending time with that person anymore. Then there's, how to say this? Fatuous.
What?
Like this.
Fatuous. Like
Yeah.
of infatuation.
Yeah. And this is when you basically you have a companionate relationship that lacks emotional intimacy. So a good example here would be being married to someone you don't love.
Like you're doing it because that's the status quo and just for stability?
Yeah, this is what to call this? I find it even weird to call this a type of love, but it's like a win-win situation, kind of, where you get something out of the other person.
Mutually beneficial relationship?
Yeah, but it's not a loving relationship, so it's, yeah, I think it's a stretch, but it makes sense to list it here. And the last one is consummate love, which is again, going back to mania, it's um, um, it's overindulged love, where it's consuming overly, but it basically it has all the important parts, which is commitment, passion, emotional intimacy, but it's taking it a step too far. Yeah, so I think the kind of what I got out of this is there's different levels of loving each other, and they kind of build on each other. For the first part, when we meet someone, we're most likely, like, in terms of romantic partner, this is not for friendship, which or family relationships, which are different types of love. But in terms of romantic relationships, first and foremost, you'd likely to be attracted to them in a physical sense, and then if things go well for you, you spend time together, you start developing a emotional intimacy where you know each other, you know what they like, what they don't like, how they behave in certain situation, and you become attached to that as well. And then third would be to, out of these two things, to start looking ahead and planning a family, or just seeing yourself with that significant other in the future.
Love is patient, love is kind. Love has to plan sometimes too,
Yeah.
and has to prepare, as you're doing.
It's always good to be at least somewhat prepared for things. Yeah, so these were the kind of, what is it now? 8 on this end and 7, 15 types of love. But they're kind of, they go into each other, and there's overlaps on these.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's
it's
interesting that a lot of it hasn't really changed too much since Aristotle.
Well, there is the saying, well, Aristotle was a contemporary with Plato, and um, it's been said that all of Western philosophy is just footnotes on what Plato did. So it's, yeah, we haven't come that far, even though we think we've developed a lot. But it's like the the basic ideas have been around for a very long time, and we're just kind of building on those.
Yeah, on an evolutionary time scale, between us and Aristotle is the blink of an eye. That's like almost no time at all. So for us to still be building on those ideas is something that makes sense, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, love has existed for a while. Let's keep it up. We have some new challenges for expressing it, especially with things like quarantine and just internet interaction with people instead of physical. So if you can, get real hugs from people in the world too. Not just watching TV shows and stuff all the time.
Yeah, I'm very much of the opinion that friendship has a friendship and love has a physical component to it, not in the sense of having to have sex with everyone and everything, but in the sense of just being there with someone physically is very different from having a conversation on the internet. And like having video calls, for example, is kind of closer to being physically with someone, but it's still not the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying these are bad things because of that, but I'm just saying it's really nice to have someone that could give you a hug when you need it,
Mm-hmm.
more so than someone sending a hug emoji from 200 miles away.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely someone who's pro hugging. Love languages wise, physical touch is definitely one of mine.
Uh, um, I'm not saying I'm totally against it, but usually I don't like to be touched for the most part.
Strangers
It's
coming up and
it's
grabbing you.
yeah,
You've been grappled by a stranger.
it's like it takes for me it takes a bit more to be comfortable with that, but once I'm comfortable with it, I do enjoy it
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, as well. So it's important, but I wouldn't call it my first and foremost love language. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of good to now um, kind of wrap up with the love languages and at the end look at some nice quotes that I found regarding love. And I think the love languages is something that it served me, it served us in our marriage to kind of have a better understanding of the other person and seeing that sometimes you do things for the other person out of love, but they're not realizing that, or they are not like they don't feel more loved because you do that. And this is when kind of the love languages are different from each other. And having a sense of what these love languages are and what's your own and what's your partner's is very important to kind of um, make them feel more loved and also receive more love in return. So this is a very good exercise for people to do, and there's online tests to figure out what your love language is. So this is something I would recommend to anyone in a committed relationship, maybe anyone with um, a nice burning arrows type of love too, in order to move that a bit further, to learn about your own and your partner's love language, and for them to do the same.
Mm.
So the first type here would be words of affirmation. This is making a compliment. You're looking really nice today, or I really loved how you split those probes on the opening of that game.
Thanks.
It's just saying nice things to other people. And this important here is that it needs not be something that the other person likes about themselves. It can be, um, but it needs to be true. Like if you're telling your wife that she looks good today, even though you don't feel that way, this is not words of affirmation. This is just being a bit of an ass.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, saying nice things to people is always a good experience. Like giving random people compliments just for the sake of it leads to some very interesting interactions. It's worth trying to just go up to a stranger and tell them they um,
One thing
have
that
a nice
Trish,
smile, or sorry, go
one
on.
thing that Trisha does a lot is she compliments people's outfit or their hair, like something that they chose about their look. She'll just be like, "That's awesome," and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, thanks," and it improves someone's day because all that effort that they put forth of choosing what they're wearing or choosing how their hair is done or whatever, it pays off because someone noticed and thought it looked cool. So you feel amazing when that happens. I think a lot of people are shy about that because you're worried it's not going to land. Generally, quick tip, if you just compliment people's body parts, that's usually kind of weird. It
Yeah,
usually lands better if you compliment their choices.
you're going up to someone saying you have a really nice big pair of eyes is not perfect. But it could be worse. Yeah, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the complimenting looks thing because I usually wear a hat and I got more compliments for my hat over the time than for everything I ever did or said or anything else. So basically, people like my hat more than myself. So it's a bit of a, yeah, love-hate.
Yeah. Plus, you're
At
tall,
least I
so
can,
like your hat is in a very high up place, so most people never even see the top of it.
yeah. But at least I can be sure I have a nice hat. So that's good, I guess.
Yeah.
The second love language is acts of service. And this is basically just doing things for someone else. And important here is doing things for someone else without expecting them to return it. Like if you're doing the dishes because you expect your significant other to then do the laundry, it's not an act of service. It's just division of household labor.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's many nice things you can do for someone. Like one of the things I try to do as often as possible, and now with pregnancy even more, is to bring my wife hot beverages whenever she's, especially when she's working, because then she's sitting at her computer, and it's always nice to know the other person thought of you and did something for you even though you didn't ask them and they didn't have to, but just it's telling them that you thought of them and you wanted to do something nice for them.
Yeah.
This can go wrong, as I said, when you feel like you're doing this and expect something in return, where you kind of then have a mental list of, all right, I did all these things and now my partner needs to do this or that thing, which is an expectation that should be met, but could lead to a lot of resentment if it's not met. So what's needed there is just to talk to them and tell them, all right, I'm gonna do all these things. Would it be okay for you to do that other thing that I really hate doing? Acts of service, if you want them to be reciprocated, are not acts of service. It's what you need there is a conversation in order to sort things out and see who has what tasks, which is not necessarily love, but it is part of a committed relationship to kind of split things between the two of you.
Yeah, it's more effective teamwork than love.
Yes. And the third love language is gifts. So basically bringing some flowers home or some chocolates or jewelry, I heard is something that people like. Seems a bit expensive. There's this really nice short for Portal where they line out that women really like diamonds for their wide range of industrial applications. Not 100% sure if that's true, but it makes me laugh.
Nice.
Yeah, and gifts don't need to be big things, even though the flower and jewelry industry tells you how much you ought to spend on a engagement ring, for example. I think it's more about being thoughtful of the other person and having something like showing your affection that way. And the way we do it is we don't give each other gifts for Christmas or for birthdays necessarily. Like you can do that, but we settle we don't have to. But rather to have this random kind of reward system where you bring each other something when you see something the other person would like.
Mm.
And it's always nice when my wife returns home from somewhere and brought me like a nice bottle of gin or something small, just to show me that she thought of me while she was away. And I almost always try to find something cute when I'm away to bring back home.
Cute, like a stuffed animal, or
More more utility based. Like she likes um, uh, different pens, for example, to do artsy stuff with, and just or these stickers and sticker tapes um, to make things look nicer.
mm.
And gifts for me, no, we get to that at the end, like in terms of what my and my wife's love languages are and how they intertwine at times. The fourth love language is quality time, and quality time is just taking the time out of your day or week to do something together. And this could be watching a movies or doing sports together, um, sitting down and having a talk, drinking coffee together. It's really taking the time to be there for each other, but not in a physical, sexual way, but just spending time together.
Mm.
I think this is what's been, or one of the things that has been really difficult, especially during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
where everyone was trapped at home. So we had little to no ways to spend time together,
Mm-hmm.
unless you were living with your significant other, in which case you arguably spent too much time together.
Yep. You're trapped
You
now.
Yeah, what tends to happen is that you don't spend time together, but you spend time in the same physical space but separate from another. Like it's just interactions and can you bring me a cup of coffee or uh, will you go walk the dogs? But it's not like it doesn't have this kind of quality to spending time with each other and figuring out what they're all about or what outlooks they have and whatnot. So it's not a engagement with the other person in that sense. And
Mm.
this is quite the trap within a relationship where it just becomes more um, interactions with each other than it becomes to do something together. And the fifth love language is what we already touched on with hugging. This is physical touch. This is not um, sexual per se, but this is like giving them a hug or um, yeah, it's basically this is all the physical touch that you don't expect or don't want to lead towards sex. Where it's just like being there for the other person in a physical way.
Mm.
And this can be it it can lead towards the other thing, but it like if you're expecting it to do that, it's not an expression of the love language anymore. It's just you wanting to get laid.
Yeah, what's more
But
companionship that you're talking about?
yeah. So these are like the five different types of things, actions you can do for each other. And most likely it's not like your love language is not one of these, but it tends towards one or two of these more than towards the others.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing which of these it is important to know what you want from your significant other, but also then what theirs are in order to know what to give them for them to feel loved. So for me, I find acts of service and quality time to be the most important. With a third, I really like gifts as well, but they're not like I feel loved even without gifts, but without having spending quality time together. Quality time for me meaning either doing sports together or taking time to philosophize about the world, which I find to be most important, not only in a uh, romantic relationship, but also how I want to spend time with my friends. And then I just find acts of service where you have someone do something for you, a really nice expression um, of their affection towards me. And for my wife, it's quality time, so we have a good overlap there. And then it's physical touch, which, as I described before, is a bit more difficult for me to receive and also to give. So it took some time to adjust in that regard there.
Were your parents not very physically loving with you?
That's a good question. I was the third child, so I guess they already used up everything on my two brothers. Um, I wouldn't say that they weren't, but I don't really have great memories of them being, so I'd say like a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, hard to tell.
I think mine and Trisha's love languages are quality time and physical touch. We talk on the phone basically all the time. Don't get bored of talking to each other, and there's always stuff to talk about. So that kind of regular interaction is nice.
Yeah.
Gifts, for me, I don't think is a main one at all. Usually it's something that doesn't even register as like giving and exchanging stuff, but spontaneous giving can be really good for making people feel valued and also romantic.
Yeah. So in that case, I assume it would be kind of a combination between quality time but also words of affirmation for you and Trish.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely building a positive team environment of not just like, hey, I'm into you, but hey, like, are you thriving and how can we live our best lives and focus on all that. So it's got the teammate mindset in addition to the companionship mindset, which is just humans sharing the experiences of the world together. And then you have the romantic on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found this always to be one of the best descriptions of love is love being the vested interest into seeing something develop, and not just the other person but the relationship itself, where it's I'm not loving someone for who they are in the moment, but also for the potential they hold on how they will develop.
광물 더 필요함. 광물 충분치 않음.
And it's easy enough
광물
to
부족함.
lose love for someone if they develop in a direction that we're not okay with. Then it's the kind of lasting love to accept them for who they are and not wanting to change them. And if it's not working out anymore, to let them go, or to leave yourself and figure out the best life for you. And they decided to do what they do because they feel like it's best for them, even though you might not agree with these decisions.
But you cheer them on.
Or yes. I'm gonna take a quick bio break, and then we look at some quotes before we wrap this thing up.
Sounds good. Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuning in to Philosophy Clock with Eche Fatum. Today we're talking the philosophy of love. We've talked about the various different kinds of love, how a person might feel them, also how they've been represented in storytelling, like films and books. And even in Twitch chat. People in Twitch chat have opinions about love as well. What's your opinion? Your opinion is that you need more love. We need more love. You have to get gold, lumber, and love. It's an urubu. Urubu. We have no quarrel with you. Urubu. Not enough happiness. Create more loving relationships. True. Even positive friendships are good. Just doing some for the love of StarCraft to Zerg max out practice. For the love of the game. StarCraft 2 is a heckin' beautiful game. Super responsive. The game does what you tell it to do. The slowest part of the whole process is the player and their execution. The system is fast. You want to know something crazy? Stormgate looking to be pretty fast. Stormgate
All right,
fast.
I'm back.
Yo.
Oh, I looked for some different fun quotes regarding the topic of love. I've tried to find good descriptions of love, but I didn't find anything that really resonated with me. So I went with the more fun approach and look at some of the more cynical takes, but also funny takes on love. One I found very funny was, where is it? Love is the delusion that one person differs from another.
What? People do differ. Who's this grouch?
This was by H.L. Mencken. Not someone I'm familiar with. Love is being stupid together.
Yeah, sometimes.
Nietzsche quote about love I really like is, there's always some madness in love, but there's always some reason in madness.
Yeah. Try to make it
Lao
tricky
Tzu.
one.
Sorry, go on.
I was saying they tried to make a tricky one there.
Yeah. Lao Tzu has a really nice quote. Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. A quote by Aristotle. Love is composed of a single soul inhabiting two bodies.
I've read that one.
You come to love not by finding the perfect person, but by seeing an imperfect person perfectly.
That's pretty cool.
One's first love is always perfect until one meets one's second love.
Yeah, love does have a lot of faith to it, where you put your faith in the person you're with.
Then I have two more. This one I find funny too. There's not enough love and compassion in this world to spend any of it on imaginary beings. And the last one, which I find really lovely, is in this world of extremes, we can only love too little.
That's true. Yeah, one of the things that I've thought about is the attitude that you can bring to people and how many people you can expand that attitude out toward. So loving kindness, and then thinking about any human that you interact with, you acknowledge faces similar problems to yourself, and you acknowledge their humanity, their ability to reason and be independent and have thoughts and opinions. Then yeah, it gives you a really good energy with how you go about conversation and interaction in general.
Yeah. I just now watched stream again. Are you in the game versus the AI?
Yeah.
Yeah. Assumed as much. Like there's no sign of enemy forces.
It's a very turtley player. They are 10 minutes in the 2 base.
There's an SCV, so there are Terrans on this map too. Yeah, so these are some thoughts and ideas on the topic of love. Um, I think to wrap this up, there's love is not like money where you can have well, it is like money in terms of you can always try to accumulate more, but it's not, it will not get less the more you spend it. So it's being loving towards others and showing compassion and being kind. It's it enriches not only your life but theirs as well. So it accumulates with the more we spend it.
Mm-hmm.
And making someone having a better day because you gave them a compliment on their um, nice outfit, their nice big eyes, or whatever. Be thoughtful about what compliments you use, but yeah, it's almost never a bad thing to show compassion and to be nice. We can kind of talk about the bad sides of that when we talk about Nietzsche again, because he had some very pointed opinion on when you should uh, barn your door for your friends and not let them in when they're standing out in the rain. And there's a reason for that too. But for the most part, just love yourself more and in turn love the world and everyone else more. And will be a huge net benefit.
Yeah, just thinking from a pure practical gamer perspective, love gives us buffs. Like it benefits both people who are involved in love because you're expressing positive energy toward each other, cooperating with each other, helping each other succeed, cherishing each other, making each other feel good about life. So, love people for both philosophical reasons, emotional reasons, and just like effect reasons. Love is awesome. Love to all of the people who hang out, philosophize with us. Cheers to you. And to you, Dr. Ritchie. And you're going to have some new types of love on the frontier. Good luck, have fun.
Yeah, this will be awesome, and I'm soon will be talk about it in the future as well on how this changed my views of what it is to love unconditionally and to just the dangers and the challenges, but also the great beauty that is parenthood.
Oh, yeah. What's the generation going to be called? We have the Zoomers out now. What's the generation of people being born current year?
Oh, not something I know.
Maybe they didn't get their nickname yet.
4, 8, 3. Generation Alpha.
Nice.
Never heard that before.
Good luck, Generation Alpha. Sorry for the mess.
It's sorry, but also not sorry because we didn't really try to change it. We just inherited it and felt like, yeah, fuck it. It's you
Yeah.
can try to solve it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Appreciate having you on Sit.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. And I'll see you in one more thing I wanted to say regarding the next lecture. I wanted to talk about what's his name again?
Nietzsche.
I'm really bad with names. No. Here it is. Bertrand Russell. He's an English philosopher. He's famous for the Principia Mathematica, so basically numbers, which I'm not terribly bad with numbers, but it's not my forte either. So I tried to enroll everyone's favorite philomathician Ragnar Raket to come on as well and to talk about some of the the number stuff that underlies his work. And then we'll need to find a time that works for her as well as for me, which means we'd probably do it a bunch earlier than we did this segment.
Yeah, Eastern time friendly. Nice, cool idea. Well, awesome. Chat, love to you. Love to the world. It's cool to love and it's very effective, so do it a lot. And we will see you all on the next episode of Floss O'Clock with Etchy Fatum. Remember, when you're floss surfing, watch your feet and stay on the wave. And if you fall off, it's okay. Good day to you, sir. Yeah.